Hi, welcome back, or for the first time, whatever. I love glad to see you. It sounds so cool, even though I don't know who's watching. Uh, Episodes ago, we started talking about what is estate planning and inventorying your assets. And last time we talked about like looking at your family's needs, about life insurance, wills versus trusts, and a power of attorney. And today I want to talk about other advanced directives that are essential. And the thing I've learned over the months, probably said this before, that so many of the documents that are part of an estate plan are completely relevant while you're living and important while you're living. Um, so for those who are superstitious and think they'll die as soon as they plan, you can give that up because most of these documents work while you're living. But the ones I wanted to talk about today, some people call it a medical power of attorney. Some states do that. Florida, it's a designation of a healthcare surrogate. And the healthcare surrogate is the person or persons that somebody appoints to make medical decisions for them if they cannot, and who has access to their medical records and can talk to their doctors. A tragedy I heard earlier in the year was a young man who was in college in the Midwest. I believe his parents were divorced and his mother lived nearby, so he had her as a surrogate and the ability to talk to a doctor. His father lived in Florida, and because his father was quote unquote far away, he did not think to give his father access to the doctors. So nobody, and this young man wound up in a hospital, nobody would talk to him. He had no access other than through his former spouse, and that wasn't a great relationship. Again, many times I've said this, it's not that it should be obvious to you. But while you're doing these documents, you want to talk to an attorney to get their recommendations about what you should do. But the healthcare surrogate is the one who makes decisions. The HIPAA waiver, since I already mentioned it, is the document that allows people to speak to your doctor, but doesn't give them any access to decisions. I'm not a big believer in appointing more than one person to make decisions. If you're going to appoint one, I'd say appoint three, because at least you get a majority with three. But when you appoint two, you run the risk of people not agreeing. So with the HIPAA waiver, you can appoint as many people as you want. Recently, I have a couple. We just did some new documents. They've appointed both of their daughters. They put both of their daughters on the HIPAA waiver and the son-in-law, just to have access to a doctor. The son-in-law is close to both parents, and in an event that his wife or his sister-in-law was not emotionally able, he could talk to a doctor. They didn't want him to make decisions. They named just the girls to make decisions, not together, one first and then the other as a successor, but they gave them all three of them the right to talk to a doctor. I have one family I think who appointed six people, just with the right to talk to a doctor. Well, you really want to do that, and you want your family doctor to know who those people are, so that if Joe Smith calls and they say I'm calling about Debbie Baker, they can look on the file and see that Joe Smith, well, he'd probably have to identify himself more than Joe Smith, but has the right to do that. So those are two, your healthcare surrogate and your HIPAA waiver. Another one is your living will. And the living will is the document that supports your healthcare surrogate in what are your end of life decisions. We could spend a whole session on this, but I'm going to put it in here now because it kind of goes with this one and the last one. It's about living wills will ask you if you are in a vegetative state, persistent vegetative state, there's no brain activity, there doesn't seem to be any evidence other than you're breathing that you're alive. If you've got an end stage condition, or you've got oh my gosh, wait, this is why you have notes, right? A terminal condition, because they're defined a little bit differently. All of them are based upon a reasonable medical probability that you'll recover. So here's the thing about having this document that I have found to be so essential. What's the definition of recover? Will you come back to who you were before you were sick? Will you come back to most of that? Or will you not be able to do much of anything that you used to do for yourself? And do you want to continue to be treated for that? So living wills are about, at what point is life support withdrawn? And we don't have to have time to define all the things that make up life support. At what point do you decide that you don't want CPR, you don't want tube feeding, you don't want surgery, you don't want antibiotics? At what point do you decide those based upon those three things: terminal condition, end stage condition, persistent vegetative state? I know for myself, I recommend everybody choose at least the persistent vegetative state. But it's up to a client. I have a client who was struggling with early onset dementia. She chose all three. I have a client who's had cancer. He's recovering now. He chose all three. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's important that you let people know, because again, without it, the family could be arguing. And if people have a living will and they've made their choices known, and they've told their healthcare surrogate, and the people on their HIPAA waiver know, when somebody medical comes along and says, well, we can do this, they have a position to stand on to say that's not what so-and-so wanted. Has nothing to do with what you want. Nothing. It has to do with what that person wants. And you have to be willing, if you're designated, to do what they want. As with the power of attorney, you don't appoint somebody to be your healthcare surrogate or give them the power of a living will without knowing that they'll do what you want. If you want to be kept alive and they don't want it, that's your wish. If you don't want to be kept alive and they don't want that, it's your wish. And it absolves people of guilt, or lets them move forward because you've given them permission to move forward as you wish. And having seen families who struggle and read about families who struggle, don't make your family struggle. Let the family grieve and move on and heal, but not struggle about end of life. And the last one is something called the final disposition. And that's about, now that you've passed, what do you want done? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want a service? Do you not want a service? Do you want open casket? Not. What do you want? I have a lot of people who are veterans. They've made arrangements to be buried in a local veterans cemetery. There are two in Florida. There's one a little north of where I am in Tampa, and there's one in Sarasota, which is a little bit south. But they can make those arrangements in advance. So all their families have to do is call the appropriate people, and it all gets taken care of. Last thing is, which I had not thought to mention, is please, in the world of taking care of your family, if you know what you want, please do it in advance. Please find a funeral home, a crematorium, somebody, get it paid for. Do not have your families make hard decisions at a time when the last thing we need to be doing is doing that. We all know people likely who spent $1,000 more than the person who passed would have wanted, or they would have done if they were being more rational and they could think about it. This is just all part of the seven steps of estate planning. This completes, our conversation about the third. As you watch this, my information is scrolling across the screen. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to call. I'll answer anybody's question. I don't care what state you're in. I can give you general counsel. I can't give you anything specific. Again, I've said, if you work with me, great. If you don't, fine. Just find somebody to work with. Get it done. Take care of it. Love your family the way you know you do. And let them know you love them. Have a great day. Like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it.